Good evening, everyone. I'm Lissy Bastian with your JCN News for this Monday, September 28th. It's great having you back with us. A double homicide early this morning in Nassau Village leaves that community reeling yet again after a 7-year-old boy was shot and killed in a crossfire just a little over a week ago. This morning, police were called to Stack Avenue in the village, where a mother and daughter were the latest victims of a senseless killing. Police Press Liaison Assistant Superintendent of Police Audley Peters says shortly after 8 a.m., police received a report of 2 bodies being found unresponsive at the residence on Stack Street. Emergency medical services were called to the scene and after examining the bodies pronounced them lifeless. Now, while ASP Peters could not say how long the bodies had been there, he did suggest that based on evidence, this incident may be as a result of a domestic dispute.
The home is supposed to be the safest place. Apparently, for a long time now in our community, that has not been the case in all aspects. And so whenever complaints of domestic violence come to the attention of the police, we seek to act on it as quick as possible. But however, in some instances, individuals make report to the police and they return and decide not to continue with those reports. We understand that there is a process that persons, whether it be the victim or whether it be the perpetrator, it's a process that they go through when violence occurs in the home. And so what we can say as police officers, all we can do is take the initial complaint and act at the request of the victim. Where we can, we refer the persons to the Ministry of Social Services for counseling or the relevant agency who can assist with respect to family parenting. And so we are concerned. In our concern, our actions are limited.
Police believe that the child is about 10 years old and the mother around 30 years of age. Now, ASP Peters says police are following a lead that is promising. When asked whether there is concern about the prevalence of violent activities in the Nassau Village area, ASP Peters says this.
The Commissioner of Police would have already put in place a special task force for Nassau Village. And apparently, in this instance, we're confident that with respect to this investigation, we will bring this to a closure. But with respect to your question concerning the violence, everyone everywhere is concerned about the violence that is proliferating in our communities. But more importantly, the guns that are out there. And we consider it that it's everyone's responsibility who knows of an individual who has a firearm in their possession to report that incident to the police, because at the end of the day, the person who's aware of it could be the very one who becomes the victim of that gun.
With this being the second death of a child lost to violence in a week, ASP Peters says the loss of a life of a minor is very disheartening and is calling for citizens to report persons in possession of illegal firearms.
It's imperative for people who are aware of these persons who are in possession of firearms, who are participating in illegal activities that could cause what we consider to be casualties of war. And in this instance, we're fighting against crime, which is a war that we're waging. And we ask members of the public to assist us in reporting the persons who will be in possession of these firearms.
As for the killing of 7-year-old Reyes Williams of Esmeralda Avenue and Alexander Boulevard last Sunday night, police say they are looking for a number of individuals and in due course, that matter should come to a closure. Well, residents of the Nassau Village community gathered on the scene of the double homicide this morning and took to reporters to express their grievances and concerns in the wake of what happened, as well as the senseless killing of 7-year-old Reyes, who was shot and killed last week. Dr. Matthew Smith, a resident of Nassau Village and principal of Achievers Christian Academy, says that there is not enough uproar in the community over these crimes.
One thing I got to say is that being a principal as well, seeing a child die. I mean, you know, we've seen persons rally up on social media back in time forward over 3 young men getting killed by police. But it's now like we're quiet now over children being shot. For the next fact, this is a next hit for Nassau Village. I asked the inspector this morning, how much more hits can we take? This is the most saddest moment I'm hearing now. Crime is increasing, and now it's like we have to really put in some measurements. You know, we talk about the curfew and whatnot, but it's now time that we actually speak about crime curfew, because if the cases are increasing, just last week a young boy, an 8-year-old boy shot, and now again a next child shot, females are being shot. it calls now that we increase more of curfew for our crime now in Nassau Village area.
Dr. Smith contends that now people are not just trying to survive the pandemic, but trying to survive a pandemic with crime and murder happening around them. Another resident, a female who wished to remain anonymous, calls upon the churches and urban renewal.
I think now more churches need to be involved now. How the churches need to be open their doors. Not just only on Sundays, but be open so when persons have a little grievance, they can probably feel comfortable going to the church and was not talking with their they might rather feel safe talking to a pastor than talking to the church. So we have the churches open now. We can probably have them more involved. And too, like urban renewal is right down the road. I feel like urban renewal now, like we in the new centuries now, urban renewal now should be 24 hours. Because if something happened, you could run right to urban renewal as so to say run down to Issue South Police Station or CDO wherever it is. Urban renewal should be 24 hours. Now we need more lights in areas where there are dark places. We need the lighting to be fixed up and lights to be installed.
Community residents say that tempers are up during the pandemic and that more needs to be done in high-risk areas. In COVID-19 news, between Friday and Saturday, the Ministry of Health confirmed 139 additional cases of the virus in country. 3 COVID-19 related deaths were also reported over the weekend. Of the deaths, health officials say 3 New Providence residents died from the virus. A 73-year-old male and a 71-year-old female who died on Friday, and a 33-year-old male who died on September 19th. These deaths bring the COVID-19 death toll to 89. 2 deaths are under investigation, bringing that total to 14. Of the confirmed COVID-19 cases, health officials reported on Friday 91 cases. 85 of them were confirmed on New Providence, 2 on Grand Bahama, 2 with locations pending, and 1 each on Abaco and Exuma. 48 additional cases were confirmed on Saturday, 47 of them on New Providence and 1 on Grand Bahama. As of Saturday, there have been 2,757 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in New Providence, 68 in Grand Bahama, 135 on Abaco, 54 on Bimini, 28 on Exuma, 22 on Eleuthera, 19 on Inagua, 15 on the Berry Islands, 12 on Long Island, 8 COVID-19 cases on Cat Island, 7 on Acklands, 6 on Andros, 5 on Crooked Island, 3 on Mayaguana, and 139 with locations pending. Notably, according to the Ministry of Health, there were 19,026 tests completed. Hospitalized cases increased by 6 and now stand at 93. Further, there were 6 additional recovered cases, bringing the total to 2,005. Now, yesterday, the Ministry of Health announced that Sunday's figures would not be released due to circumstances beyond its control. The dashboard will resume sometime today. Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis addressed the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly this weekend. In addressing the General Assembly, Dr. Minnis reiterated calls for a vulnerability index to be institutionalized, which allows countries like the Bahamas to access international financing based on the level of exposure, vulnerability, and ability to recover from external shocks.
Mr. President, the economies of small island developing states, including those of the Caribbean community, are under constant assault from various external shocks beyond their control. This group of countries is among the most disaster-prone areas in the world. Pandemics, hurricanes, or climatic events do not discriminate between low-income countries, middle-income countries, and developed economies. Hence, the compelling question remains as to why middle-income countries are still being assessed by international financial institutions using outdated methodologies that give no consideration to a country's level of exposure, vulnerability, and ability to recover from exogenous shocks.
He says it is to be noted that the Economic Commission of Latin America and the Caribbean's review of the COVID-19 impact estimates that developmental achievements in the Caribbean and Latin America have been reversed by at least a decade, adding that the World Bank projections point to at least 100 million people falling into extreme poverty.
I therefore reiterate the call for the institutionalization of a vulnerability index in the decision-making processes of the international financial institutions and international donor community. also echo the call of the region for the capitalization of the Caribbean Resilience Fund. The decision of the G20 group to suspend debt service payments for the least developed countries is commendable, and I offer that this concession should be extended to other economic groupings as well.
Dr. Minnis also says while we remain cautiously optimistic for a viable COVID-19 vaccine in the not-too-distant future, notes that collaborative efforts of the COVAX facility to secure arrangements for developing countries.
Mr. President, while we remain cautiously optimistic for a viable COVID-19 vaccine in the not-too-distant future, we note the collaborative efforts of the COVAX facility to secure arrangements for developing countries. Developing countries should be able to access vaccines via a transparent procurement process at affordable market rates. We salute the doctors, nurses, other healthcare workers, and all on the front line who have sacrificed their own health in order to assist tens of millions of people around the world. They are the real heroes to whom the global community owes immense gratitude.
As nations celebrate the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, the Prime Minister says we should not allow the pandemic to dampen our spirits and detract from commemoration of this institution and its extensive list of achievements and milestones. You're watching JCN News. When we return, a hit and run leaves a man dead. Sans Bear relaunched today, and the Ministry of Education slams fake news. Stay with us.
This segment of the news was brought to you by Alive.